So last night sucked, at least from my perspective. And I had a chance to sleep on it, and I woke up today and I feel the same. There were a lot of blunders, a lot of mistakes, if you will, in last night's very disappointing loss by the Golden State Warriors to the Houston Rockets. If there's any good news, at least for this program's front, is that Sophia Jones is joining us today, the voice of calm and reason, certainly to counterbalance the passion that I bring sometimes to the table. But I did, in sleeping on it, Sophia, realize something. There are three players who, in my opinion, should not be on the basketball court together for the remainder of this season. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. We're going to hear Sophia Jones' thoughts on the Golden State Warriors as they approach the final week of the regular season. It's here. Sophia, are we going to talk about the Valkyries draft as well, or are we going to save that for next week?
I think we can touch on it a little bit. The women's tournament just concluded yesterday, so I say we should go for it.
We will do that as well. Let's get into it. It is Monday. Hopefully we'll brighten your day and the start of your week at least a little bit. This is the Golden Days.
They always find something to nitpick, and that's because there's expectations for us to win.
We are going to win the championship.
Let's go.
In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up.
Welcome to the Golden Days. I'm one of your two hosts for the afternoon, Cyrus Saatsaz. Sophia Jones is available on Twitter at Sophia_Jones_2. I am available on Threads and Instagram at Dog Wild, over on Twitter at Surf Journalist, the program on both platforms at Golden Days Pod. Sophia, it is great to see you. We'll get to the ad reads in just a second, but your immediate reaction to the Warriors losing last night. They're now in a four-way tie for fifth place. 4 games remaining in the season. Oh boy, this is the home stretch. Stakes are high. How are you doing, and your reaction to last night's game?
I'm doing well, and that loss wouldn't have stung as much if the Warriors weren't in such a precarious position right now, currently with those standings, with 5th through the 8th seed. All are the same number of games behind. So they can't afford to drop any more games pretty much for the whole rest of the season at risk of another time in the play-in tournament. But in terms of the actual game, I just felt like the Warriors didn't necessarily respond to the Rockets' physicality. That's every single time they play Houston, they need to expect that they're going to be against a lot of pressure and a lot of defensive-minded schemes, and they just didn't know how to handle it. And you can't have Steph Curry only scoring 3 points for a whole game.
That was crazy. I didn't have a chance to really research just how bad that was over his entire career. Like, I don't know what his career low is in scoring, and I should have researched that. My bad. But I'm gonna guess that 3-point total ranks among the lowest totals ever for Stephen Curry. It was a bad look, and we're going to break down a lot of what went wrong in that game so that the team hopefully doesn't repeat these mistakes with 4 games remaining on the season. And we're going to do all that and so much more after we give some love to our sponsors for the afternoon. First up is Visit Humboldt. Again, a place I once called home, a place I call paradise. If you love the outdoors, if you love nature, if you love clean water, fresh air, all the good stuff that comes with what we're supposed to be experiencing on our beautiful blue and green earth that we live on, you can actually experience the goodness of Mother Nature by visiting Humboldt. They've got phenomenal restaurants, great breweries, wineries, the hiking trails. I mean, between the national parks and the state parks are absolutely beautiful and impressive. And if you're watching on YouTube, again, we play this video brought to you by visithumboldt.com just to showcase some of the beauty of an incredible getaway that is just hours driving wise from the San Francisco Bay Area or Sacramento. You can also take a really quick flight up there. I did that once or twice, and it's easy breezy in terms of travel. You could always DM me as well, either on Instagram at Dog Wild or over on Twitter at Surf Journalist, and I will be a resource for you in terms of a great itinerary for things to do, places to go, or again, check out visithumboldt.com where they have all the resources you need for lodging, for things to do. It's awesome. Check it out. Thank me later. Today's episode also brought to you by MyBookie, although I should have checked to see if they're actually a client today. This was a short read. I'll give the read anyways. Look, we got the championship game tonight on the men's side for college basketball. You can bet on that and so much more with MyBookie. And if you use the promo code MM50, M as in Mary, so MM50, MM50, you can boost your bankroll with a deposit bonus designated and designed to help you make the most of your money. If you don't want a bonus, that's okay too. Just make sure you let them know we here at Golden Days sent you. Bet on every game, anytime, from anywhere, only with MyBookie. Sophia, there's a stat that I thought summarized best why I was so aggrieved last night, why I was personally so frustrated watching the Warriors. And look, I'm tired of small ball. This is no secret. Part of it is, and again, this is where I feel like if you want to differentiate an old school Warriors fan, someone who's been watching this team, in love with this team for decades, you will likely get triggered like I have been lately when you see undersized players getting extensive minutes. Don Nelson did this for decades. Didn't work. It was okay in spurts. It beat the Mavericks, the We Believe Warriors, but it didn't bring any championships home. And there is a very clear difference between medium-sized basketball and the Hobbit stuff that, again, we saw last night. Here's the trio of players that I personally never want to see again. And Sophia, I'd love to get your reaction to this. The three players I'm referring to are Stephen Curry, Brandon Pajemski, and those two are starting games. So chances are you're going to see those two on the court a lot together. The third player I don't want to see on the floor with them is Gary Payton II, a player who, again, I hate criticizing. I really, I'm so just disappointed in the fact that I'm in this position where I'm blasting a player that is beloved by so many people. And look, this is the price you pay for credibility. Sometimes hard truths are not popular. And I know what I'm saying here is not the most popular take, advocating for less GP2 minutes. But the more specific gripe I have is seeing Steph, Pajemski, and Gary Payton II together on the floor, because that represents 3/5 of the bodies you have out there. And when 3/5 of your lineup has an average height of 6'3", I don't think that's going to work. The Warriors beat the Memphis Grizzlies. They beat the LA Lakers. They beat the Denver Nuggets with lineups that did not have GP2, but did have a lot of minutes for players like Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Keith Santos, Quinton Post, players who are young, but players who also bring size, athleticism, high basketball IQ. I don't see a detriment of giving them extensive minutes. Steve Kerr does, unfortunately. And last night was a perfect example of that. And here's the stat I'm going to read to you, Sophia, before I give the floor to you. Those three playing together, Steph, Pajemski, GP2, combined, they played 101 minutes together on the floor this season. That is exorbitant to me to begin with. Their net rating when those three are on the floor together in the 101 minutes spanning this entire season, a -6. It doesn't translate to winning basketball, and I don't want to see it anymore. Your thoughts?
When you first teased the idea of which three players you didn't want to see on the court at the same time, and then alluded to small ball, I had a feeling that it was going to be those three players that you mentioned. And just like you said, because they're the average combined height of just being 6'3", that's not nearly as tall enough to be able to just combat defensively. I mean, Steph Curry, he's gotten better at his defense, but there are he's smaller. Gary Payton, he's gotten a little bit slower with his age. And Pajemski, he shows a lot of effort, but sometimes that necessarily doesn't translate all the time to getting stops. And just with the rebounding as well. And the fact that when you have those smaller players on the court, they take up a lot less of the court size. So it doesn't shrink the floor when you're a defensive team. Your goal you want to do is to shrink the floor. So you want everyone to be outstretched in the gaps in the proper places. So that's the offense's opponent. Everything, it doesn't look like there are many gaps and places to shoot. And when you have smaller players, it doesn't necessarily shrink the floor, it opens it up.
Absolutely right. And that plays into what Ramona Shelburne told us a few weeks back regarding vertical spacing. This is a concept that I've, again, not mentioned much, but very astute in terms of calling that out. And Sophia, side note, I did come up with, I think I figured out finally how we can play highlights on this show. Because I always see these other YouTube programs playing basketball highlights, and yet they're monetizing their content. And every time I've tried to do that in the past, like YouTube's immediately flagging me. The NBA's immediately coming after me with strikes, telling me you're not allowed to play this. I think the mistake I was making, and so far so good because I got no strikes from last night's show, is that I was playing the audio with the highlights. So I think, for example, when I share this video, and this clip right here shows just some of the pressure Stephen Curry was facing defensively last night, right? He was
percent. And I agree with you just in terms of the legacy for the caliber of player that Steph Curry is deserves to be reflected in the number of rings that he also received. I also feel like he could get another finals MVP as well. That would be definitely even more cemented into his status. But just like how you mentioned with some of these lineups smaller, especially in order to kind of get some of that pressure off of Steph, you either need to have, sometimes you only need to have like one other major guard ball handler on the floor, just so Steph isn't having to dribble it up the floor every single time against heavy pressure. Like that one clip that we saw where he was right by half court and Sengun was basically pushing him over. But just having more threats to where when Steph Curry even is drawing that defender out and they're sticking with him, that they can then go attack the paint and not just stay completely on the perimeter. Because sometimes even if Steph is locked down like that, you can still use it as an asset for a coach with having that player just drawn out of the paint that's defending Steph, and having that open up just for more players to drive, which is something that when you have smaller lineups, it's harder to take advantage of that.
What are your thoughts, Sophia, on Warrior 30, who I think is just Kai just rebranding so he can stay in the chat. But saying Jonathan Kuminga was not good. To add some perspective again last night, you could look at Kuminga's three-point shooting. He was 1 of 4. Fair. That's a fair criticism. 25% is not very good. 3 turnovers. Okay, that's fair. The fair criticism, not very good. Although Draymond, Pajemski, and Stephen Curry had 4 turnovers each in last night's game. But what I don't appreciate is the Kuminga haters. They'll bring up net rating in a game when it suits their narrative, right? But then when he's leading the team in net rating, all of a sudden suddenly that's a subjective stat that doesn't matter. I agree it's a subjective stat. Just don't bring it up in specific cherry-picked moments. Sophia, do you think Kuminga had a bad game last night? And do you think the 19 minutes he got was warranted? Your thoughts?
I don't think he had a bad game. It's just kind of sometimes it's one of those things where when everyone on the team isn't necessarily firing at the caliber like they should be, that's just another one of the things that stands out because Kuminga is a type of player where he's more so isolation and getting into his own shots. So when he misses shots, it's highlighted more. It feels bigger because he might have taken a couple of seconds off the shot clock to get into that shot, as opposed to maybe a catch and shoot player like Buddy Hield. But I wouldn't necessarily say that he had a bad game.
Not at all. I think that's a ridiculous criticism. And again, GP2, people will highlight that he scored 16 points. Bear in mind that most of those 16 points came when Steph was double or triple teamed. Anybody in his position would be wide open, dropping those easy layups. And he also missed a bunch of layups. He was also on the floor. And Sophia, as someone who played D1 basketball, maybe you'll appreciate why this variable drove me crazy incredibly. And I'm shocked more people were not pointing this out. The Warriors, and GP2 was on the floor for all three of these moments. And it's why he started to become the player that again, taking no pleasure in criticizing, but his minutes are kind of crazy. And I don't think they help the team when he's getting more minutes than the four young players that I mentioned, Moody, Kuminga, Quentin Post, Guy Santos. But the part that I think would drive a coach crazy, and I'm curious to know if it drove you crazy, is they gave up 3 offensive rebounds on missed free throws. Like, one of those would drive me up the wall if I was coaching a game. 3 of those, and he's still and Kerr makes no adjustment to that. That was when I started to lose my, you know what? What's your reaction to when a team gives up an offensive rebound on a missed free throw? Because that to me is one of the biggest faux pas you can do as a basketball player and team.
Oh, it 100% is. It's just something that should never happen. For my team in college, where I played at San Jose State, whenever we would miss a free throw line box out, it would be a 17 in practice the next day, which is basically sideline to sideline 17 times. And so if the Warriors are playing by college rules, they'd have to run 3 17s today, which isn't fun. But that's just kind of one of the things where you have the advantage on free throw line box outs.
Yes.
And it's just about every person there doing their job. Either someone getting the shooters, there's a certain thing called pinching, where if there's 3 people, then the 2 people here, they like go in front of that person to pinch to prevent them from getting the rebound. But there are a lot of strategies where it's not that difficult, but everyone does have to be locked in to a certain extent. And that's kind of one of the biggest indicators of just that mental lapse.
Big time. And again, this is if I can start getting away with actually playing video highlights on a consistent basis, this show is going to go to a whole new level here. I want to give you an example of why size matters in basketball and why the GP2 minutes hurt the Warriors last night. This was just one example of a lot of plays of defensive breakdowns by the Golden State Warriors. Look at this play right here, okay? And again, the Rockets did this a lot in last night's game, where Brandon Podziemski, who does not have the greatest lateral foot speed, was beat. And typically when you're a defender and you get beat, this is where the help comes in. And the Warriors are very good at this, right? The whole defense on a string approach applies to moments like these, where if you get beat, the help comes immediately, and then everyone else has to adjust appropriately as well. So when Podziemski's getting beat and the help is GP2 at 6'2", this is why size matters, okay? And when we watch this highlight, you'll get a better understanding here. So Şengün, who ate up the Warriors last night, gets switched up on Podziemski. Spin, goes right past him. GP2 had no shot at stopping that, and it was a +1 in the process. Şengün was eating him up alive. But that first highlight is the more specific one I was looking at. Again, that's why size matters. Do you see Şengün just easily putting it up over Podziemski? Height matters. Size matters in the NBA. I don't know if that clip substantiated all. Here it is one more time. Şengün switched on Podziemski. Physical, but the spin was easily effective, and then GP2 stood no shot stopping him. Sophia, your reaction to that clip, and just, again, any final thoughts on the small ball approach not being very effective in basketball?
Yeah, and even like that whole play where Podziemski was guarding Şengün was even initiated because he had to switch from the Fred VanVleet screen. It was originally supposed to be Draymond. So kind of with every screen and every switch, every help defender, it just causes people to be not with their matchups.
Yeah.
And with a potentially bigger lineup, instead of that Gary Payton rotating over, it may be a Moses Moody, where he has, like you mentioned, just a little length. But you talk about the defense on a string. You don't want to get beat, but it happens in basketball. And when you have that help, it just everyone automatically goes to the next person and everyone has their rotations. But once the ball starts swinging more and you get too many of those mismatches, that is definitely where small ball does not help.
G in the chat is on fire. For example, he writes, or she, I don't know the gender. When we used to play small ball, and this is why there are levels to this, right? Like when it's Steph, Pajemski, GP2, that's Hobbit ball. All right. The small ball that the Warriors winning championships with, I never called that small ball. That was just, maybe not having centers and traditional power forwards, but you had lineups of like dudes who were 6'5" to 6'8". Klay Thompson as your starting two guard was 6'7", which would be the tallest player in the starting lineup if in today's game, tied with Jimmy Butler. Andre Iguodala was 6'6", 6'7", depending on how you measured him. Sean Livingston, 6'8". The small ball that the Warriors won titles with. Otto Porter Jr. was starting games in the NBA Finals when they won in 2022. He's 6'8". Height matters. Size matters. I can't emphasize that enough. And I want to highlight this as well, that it was written in the chat real fast. Warrior 30, aka Kai 17, writing that the small ball starting lineup was 14-0. That is not, GP2 is not a part of that, one. And two, Moses Moody is a part of that, and he only got 14 minutes last night, which again is part of my whole argument here. You got like Kerr abandoned Moody as well, and he's a part of that starting five. I don't know. So that's my gripe. That is why I'm disappointed in how this game was coached last night. G also saying that if Steve Kerr was the head coach of the Chicago Bulls back in the day, Scottie Pippen would be coming off the bench because Scottie and MJ's skill sets were too similar. Yes, logically that makes perfect sense, and it's why I'm sometimes so frustrated. Any final thoughts on that topic before we switch gears, Sophia?
Yeah, I think sometimes when the whole thing was small ball, there's a difference between sometimes the Warriors currently playing a small ball versus their traditional positionless basketball style. I think like when you talk about Draymond Green and how he was one of the main proponents of the point forward title, and just having a lot of people being able to play multiple positions, I think that's where the positionless can kind of get muddled in with small ball sometimes. Whereas small ball is, like you said, when there are lineups with Gary Payton, Steph Curry, Brandon Pajemski, and it's not necessarily positionless, it's just small ball.
Yeah, it's hurting the team, and I hope there's a switch here. I don't doubt that the starters didn't play well, but what I'm trying to say here is that the adjustment was not appropriate. You don't penalize 4 players who were pivotal pieces for wins over 3 of the best teams in the NBA. You don't penalize them the moment life gets difficult for you, and that's what happened in last night's game. Now, last night's game also featured, I thought, horrendous officiating, and 2 examples in mind were just the way Stephen Curry was treated, getting mauled, and then Draymond Green getting called for a flagrant 1 by going up for a layup. Like that part was crazy to me. Which one do you want to start first with? I'm sorry. Which one do you want to start with first? And your immediate reaction to just the way that game was officiated last night. Again, an awful excuse to make. I never like it, but that was very biased and one-sided and egregious. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm the same with you. I hate to blame the officiating for an outcome, but it makes it a lot harder sometimes, which is what we saw yesterday. You mentioned just the way that Steph was getting treated. He gets that treatment almost every single game, but especially it's amplified against Houston. They have a rotation of players that seem to step up to the challenge of guarding him very physically. I mean, Dylan Brooks, of course, we know that whole backstory and history from his time with the Memphis Grizzlies and being that player that the bad guy, I think he would self-proclaim himself as.
Yeah.
And Thompson, Jalen Green. So they just had a rotation of players, and especially with someone that moves as much as Steph Curry does and wears opponents out, to have kind of that lineup just be able to take different shifts guarding him is super beneficial to save their legs, especially on the offensive end. But then you talk about the Draymond Green flagrant, and that was one of those that was just an unfortunate play. Obviously, it was above the shoulders. It was in the nose, so that's why they kind of reviewed it. And typically with flagrants, they look at, I believe, 3 criteria, which is wind up, impact, and follow through. And to me, it felt like the main thing that was happening there was just impact. For wind up, I mean, a lot of times as a basketball player, especially for posts, I'm not a post, but I just know this. You're taught to always keep the ball high. And so Draymond, that possession against Şengün, he just led with his elbows that unfortunately contacted with Şengün's nose. But you're always taught to keep the ball high when you're going to the basket. So I didn't really see a wind up and follow through. It's not like he really like drove his elbow in. It was just kind of a basketball motion for the most part that unfortunately resulted in a hit nose from Şengün. But the flagrant, I'm not sure.
Side note, yeah, well, the flagrant, that was crazy. And by the way, great description of what you're supposed to be allowed to do and not do as you're attacking the paint and the rim. Before we resume with the officiating thing, I just want to highlight one post here real fast. Danielle Bordegaray, if I pronounce that correctly, writes that I think Kuminga has talent, but I just think his IQ is very low. Side note, this is, again, the typical subjective critiques that we hear about Kuminga. Here's what I'm going to respond with from now on. Anytime someone comes in with an attack like that on Kuminga, a subjective, in my opinion, a very unfair criticism, because it's not based at all in any form of measurables or anything other than just your opinion. So I'll respond to anyone from now on who says Kuminga has a very low IQ with, I think Steve Kerr has a low IQ. Just my opinion. Okay, so we move on. Now, again, and if you think that's ludicrous, my entire point is I think it's ludicrous to levy that same critique on Kuminga. Sophia, when someone says low IQ applying to basketball, like, I find that to be insulting. I do. Like, if you're a turnover machine out there, if you're just a bad player out there, I get it. Kuminga, to me, I don't see a bad player out there. Yes. Are there individual possessions here and there where he makes mistakes? Yeah. Does every NBA player have individual possessions where they make mistakes? Yeah. So again, call him low IQ if you want. My response to that will be twofold. One is, in my opinion,
that's ignorant.
Yeah, it is
ignorant. You're being ignorant.
Very ignorant. And I don't think the same people saying that would like me to say that Steve Kerr has a low IQ. So that's my response to that. Now, and again, here's another one, Warrior 30. His IQ is lacking. Based on what? Your opinion? Don't agree with that. So then I'll just say Steve Kerr is low IQ. But now going back to the officiating, I want to play this soundbite from Draymond Green. Draymond Green actually talked about the play. And this was courtesy of the Draymond Green show, which he recorded, I think, late last night is when I imagine this happened. So let's hear from Draymond. He's talking with his buddy Baron Davis, his co-host on the Draymond Green show, and they talk about that specific play, which, again, to me, was ludicrous.
The flagrant foul wasn't necessarily what killed me. What killed me was the description, explanation.
After review, we see that Draymond delivers contact with speed as his wind-up makes significant impact to the head of Şengün. It's going to be a flagrant foul, penalty 1 on Draymond Green.
He wound up
Like he busted you for a cry.
like, delivered with force.
That was ill, yo.
I'm just not sure how else to go to the basket. Yeah, it definitely changed the game. After that, it definitely was deflated, and we just didn't have enough in the tank. The Denver game was really a scheduled loss. We get back home off a 2-week trip. Nonetheless, we dug deep and we found a way to get that game. I think all of that eventually caught us tonight.
It's just legs, dead legs.
Yeah, exactly. They made some big shots. Jalen Green had a really good game. Amen Thompson, I've been a fan of him.
Crazy.
He's so athletic. He's just getting more and more confident. He really the key to that team. Şengün played well. So you got to give them some credit. They played well across the board.
They athletic. They got a lot of skilled players. They tough. They play tough.
I love our chances we see this team in the playoffs, but they do play us tough.
So one thing I want to follow up with on that clip, and obviously I want to hear your opinion on that, is if there was any reassurance following last night's game, it came in the form of Stephen Curry and Draymond Green in their press conference, which they held together. I don't remember those two doing one in the regular season together. Doesn't mean they haven't. It's just my memory does not recollect it. Postseason's a different story. I think they've done quite a few together in the postseason, but they were laughing. They did not look like a team that was stressed. They did not look like a team that had just lost a game that put them in a 4-way tie for 5th place. They don't seem concerned is the vibe I'm getting, Sophia, and that's reassuring. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a balance between you never want to take a loss too lightly, and like you mentioned, not being overly concerned and letting it completely weigh down on you. So that is still a positive sign, especially when Draymond mentions the schedule that they've had leading up to it and just dead legs, that stuff, it makes an impact, and it could have just came down to that, honestly. And when he talked about the flagrant and just how deflating of a moment that can be for a game and how difficult it can be to respond from that, especially when you're a little fatigued, it takes a lot extra energy to kind of bring yourself up out of that. And the Warriors just didn't have that.
They did look tired. Like Stephen Curry legitimately looked tired. I just wish we saw adjustments. That's all I'm trying to say. It just looked like I just didn't see the ingenuity that could have been applied. If the game wasn't so close, I could have stomached that easier as well. But they were like within 10 with just minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. That was a winnable game. And the position they're in now, we're going to talk about the standings in just a minute. It's a position they could have avoided, but to go 3-1 of that 4-game stretch, insane. I mean, especially that Nuggets game. The Nuggets, by the way, Sophia, does it surprise you that I was watching NBA today on ESPN, and they revealed what would happen if there was a 5-team tie between the Warriors, Clippers, T-Wolves, Nuggets, and Grizzlies. If all 5 of those teams finished tied, the Warriors would be second in that 5-team group. I think the Clippers are 1, the Warriors are 2. I can't remember who. The only thing I remember for certain is that the Warriors are 2 and the Nuggets are 5. So if that ended up happening, the Nuggets would be a play-in team. Your reaction?
Yeah, Denver has been a really interesting team this year. I mean, Jokic, he's been playing even more, some of the best basketball of his career, but as an overall team, they have just been extremely inconsistent. I mean, at the beginning of the season, they were still one of the top teams in the West, and then we were kind of thinking, are they going to get back to the finals again? But they continue to just go on stretches where they drop games, and I don't know. I think that I still don't know if I want the Warriors to see them, but Denver could be.
No, I'm with you.
But just with the way that Denver has been slipping and losing games recently, it could definitely lead to an interesting bottom half, or just, I guess, bottom half of the playoff secure teams and the play-in teams.
It's crazy. I have never, to the best of my recollection, remember this tight of a race with just 3 to 4 games remaining. The Nuggets only have 3 games left on their schedule. The Warriors have 4. I don't remember this level of logjam ever. Like, this is craziness. I mean, it's riveting, it's exciting, exhausting if you're covering this. Side note, it's really good stuff. Armando Laura in the chat of Golden Days are saying that the Rockets and Lakers scare me far more than the Nuggets. Easy to game plan for Jokic in 7 games. Just his 2 cents. That's a good point. And Bruce Morrow adding that Jamal Murray dealing with, I believe, a hamstring injury. He's missing a bunch of games lately. So who knows? Who knows what version of the Nuggets are going to be in the postseason? But Sophia, you're right. We've had these discussions before about like the ideal matchups, and like the Grizzlies come to mind and their record without Ja Morant. But I think you said it best, and this is one of many reasons why your mind is brilliant, especially when it comes to basketball. Is you highlight the fact that in so many ways when it comes to the postseason, it comes down to who is the star player you have to face on the other team. And do you really want to deal with that guy? And when it comes to the Nuggets, you're right. Even if they're a play-in team, do you want to face Nikola Jokic for potentially 7 games? Hell to the effing no for me. I'm with you. Even the Lakers, who I think is a far better matchup for the Warriors than the Nuggets. Do you want to face LeBron and Luka in 7-game series? Hell to the no. So yeah, that stuff absolutely comes into play, at least for me. And I feel you. I agree with you. I think those are astute points. Let's play one more clip, because I think this was very astute as well, and this is courtesy of Jimmy Butler. Maybe astute's not the right word, but it's pertinent given that Stephen Curry last night was manhandled, at least from my perspective. There were so many plays, I lost count of that, where he just hands are on him, he's grabbed, he's bumped, and just nothing. No whistle was blown. So Jimmy Butler, who's been playing against Stephen Curry for most of his career, they're now teammates, and now he's getting a unique perspective of seeing it from both sides. And Jimmy Butler was asked about the fouls. I played this clip on last night's show, but the volume was so low I could barely even understand what he was saying. This time the audio is much better. Here is Jimmy Butler talking about the unfair treatment of Stephen Curry when it comes to officials.
I don't even know. I've never seen an individual get fouled more than he gets fouled. That's, to me, I think that's it's astounding. But it's crazy to say, but he's used to it. It's been happening to him his whole career, and he's found a way through it, around it, under it, whatever you want to call it. It's tough.
The fouling, you mean not just tonight? You mean since you've been here?
I mean, yeah, I've seen it since I've been here, but I don't know how many years he got. What he got, 16? I'm pretty sure it's been happening for 16 straight years. I get to see it, and it really angers me that he's on my team and he gets hacked like that.
It's crazy to me too. You've been around the NBA most of your life. I don't know what's going on here, Sophia. What's your read on this?
I couldn't tell you, and sometimes I've talked to my father about this as well. For anyone who hasn't watched, Mark Jones, he's does play-by-play with the Sacramento Kings and ESPN.
The voice of the NBA, in my humble opinion. Sorry, go ahead.
But we've talked about it before, where because Steph is just so humble and not that much of just, I guess you could even say, like a sore loser or crybaby, because he's just that, and he's very kind of even kill, mellow for the most part. He doesn't get some of that same respect. And this is, like I mentioned, this is a conversation that me and my father have had. And I feel like that you can see that reflected in the way that he gets officiated. There are certain superstars in the NBA that seem to get every single call, but that is not the case with Steph. It could be his size as well, just because, I mean, he's a smaller player, so contact does look a little bit more drastic as opposed to someone outputting that same amount of force on a bigger player. But just the way that Steph gets guarded on ball, off ball is something that I don't even know if I've seen. Exactly like Bruce Morrow says here in the chat. It's because he's too nice. People see Steph, they think the baby face assassin still, say, oh, he's all smiles and shimmying. So I don't know, maybe it's because they see that joy and they don't regard it as intensity. And because of that lack of intensity, they don't give him the same respectful whistle.
And adding to that, you don't see Stephen Curry doing this head whip thing, right? That a lot of players do, which is so gimmicky, and yet it sadly works effectively on the refs routinely. Like Şengün, I saw him do it a few times last night, and it made Draymond look far worse than he actually was. Like there was one play, for example, where Dre, his arms locked up with Şengün for a minute. And again, moving forward, we're going to start having more video highlights to bolster these now that I know how to, now that I've finally figured it out. Yeah. So, but it's, I've heard arguments as well that it's a counterbalance. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, that the Steph treatment is an effect or a cause and effect thing where because Draymond Green gets away with so much that Stephen Curry is penalized for that. Is that logic sound to you, or is that crazy?
I think it's crazy. I don't agree with that.
Same.
Especially because you start sometimes to get into the conversations too when a player doesn't get fair treatment in terms of officiating. I hate to say it, but sometimes you get into situations where because players are so aggressive, that's how players get hurt. I mean, sometimes you have those contact injuries, either like or non-contact, God forbid, but sometimes, yeah, when players they get a little bit of leniency, they start to just run with it, and that's where you get some just really overly aggressive plays that sometimes result in the fact that Steph has stretches where he's just really beat up.
Yeah, that's the part of it that drives me the most insane is he's the face of your league. This is a league that is not exactly prospering at this moment here in the United States. Globally, it's on fire popularity-wise, but in the US, you're competing with so many other entertainment options and interests in other sports. Like, this is not the time for the NBA to be flippant with certain things. And Stephen Curry is the face of the NBA, at least one of them, to constantly put him at risk for injury, like you said. It's mind-blowing to me. It sucks. It sucks. I'm really not a fan of it. But what are you going to do? Young West 79 real fast in the chat asking if the Warriors win the chip. And again, this is part of the reason why I am so passionate about this topic this time of year. I do think they're going to win the chip. I don't think it's like a maybe. If, and this is a huge caveat, but I'm saying this with the utmost of conviction. If the Warriors play minutes, give minutes and play rotations like they did against Memphis, Denver, and the Lakers, a fifth championship is coming. I guarantee it. But if we see this type of minute distribution like we saw last night, where Kerr is just reverting to trusting veterans, again, Podziemski is always the exception, and that's a whole other discussion. But if he's doing that, like Jonathan Kuminga, I saw in the chat tonight someone saying repeatedly that GP2, he scored 16 points. I don't understand the criticism. Well, you know who the third leading scorer on the Warriors is? If points is going to be this big of a focus, Stephen Curry's averaging 24.4 points per game. He's the leading scorer on the Warriors. Jimmy Butler is second at 17.2 points per game. Jonathan Kuminga, third at 15.6 points per game. Why is the third leading scorer on your team only getting 19 minutes in a pivotal game? Make that make sense for me. Sophia, I'm not asking you as a question there because there is no making sense of that. But that is why I care so much, because I want Steph to get the fifth championship that will cement and certify his legacy in the grand scheme of things. That boy needs 5 chips. That's my take on it. Any final thoughts on that, Sophia, before we shift gears and talk Valkyries?
Yeah, I feel like nowadays there is so much emphasis put on numbers, specifically scoring. And sometimes a player can go up there and have a career high, but their impact on the game is actually detrimental sometimes.
Hmm.
So that's where I really think that you just have to watch. Like, you have to watch and just analyze and be able to pick apart and see, like, oh, you know what? Even though they did this and this was shown up in the box score, that really didn't reflect the impact that they had on the floor. And I feel like even the players that you mentioned between Steph, Jimmy, and Kuminga, they have a lot of impact on the floor, even when they're not necessarily scoring all the time.
Yes, absolutely right. By the way, before we talk Valkyries, two things. One, going back to the Steve Kerr tattoo. This is why I made the commitment to get a Steve Kerr tattoo if the Warriors win the championship. That's how special I think Steph is, right? And this is why, like, I don't have a lot of power in this world. I might have a little influence from this program. I'm going to use that influence the best I can to help Steph. That is my agenda. That is my modus operatus, if you will. With all that said, real quickly here, Brandon Pajemski has been shooting the ball insanely well. Sophia, are you noticing anything different from Pods? Because this is what we've been waiting for from his Santa Clara days.
I could not tell you what it is, other than maybe just the instilled confidence that Steve Kerr continues to pour into Pajemski is finally coming to fruition, and he's playing like the player that they drafted.
And side note, if I could change the name of this show to the Stephen Curry Fan Club and get away with it, probably would. I've never once denied that I'm a fan of Stephen Curry. That guy, he epitomizes greatness. He represents everything that I think is good in this world. So forgive me for the Steph agenda. That is my cause. That is my agenda. The Golden State Valkyries have a draft pick next week, and this leads to Jay Capinia in the chat. It was asking at the beginning of the show, when you guys switch topics, when you start talking WNBA, start with Paige Beckers, who, side note, I wish she could be drafted by the Valkyries, but there's no chance in hell she's falling to the 5th pick. She's going to be the number 1 pick. Your reaction to the women's side of March Madness, which was riveting. I watched that title game. Well, for a while, it was a blowout, but your reaction to Paige Beckers, and then we'll talk Valkyries.
Yeah, I love Paige. We played in the same AAU Under Armour circuit, so I don't think our teams ever played against each other, but, just see in passing or just look on another court and watch her play a lot. So I've been a fan of Paige's for a while, and as much as I love Dawn Staley in South Carolina, I was so happy to see her get a national championship before she entered the WNBA. Really a generational player. There's no way she's not gonna be the number 1 overall pick. But you mentioned the Valkyries and that she's not gonna slip. The Valkyries, they have the 5th pick. Since there's an expansion team, they weren't in the lottery. They just got allotted that 5th pick. But it's been a really interesting throughout these last couple weeks between the tournament and some players pulling out. So for women's college basketball, you either have to go to school for 4 years, or you have to turn 22 in that calendar year as a college player in order to declare for the draft. And so 2 players specifically, Olivia Miles from Notre Dame, who's actually currently in the transfer portal right now, and Lauren Betts of UCLA, they both pulled out, and they were projected to be pretty high picks. So that kind of shifted a lot. And then
if you don't mind me interrupting real fast, is the motive for not entering the WNBA and going back to college, is the NIL the reason for that? Like, are these athletes getting paid so they can afford to not go to the WNBA, or like, what's the reasoning for them like holding back? Is I guess what I'm asking.
Yeah, kind of honestly, to get on a more societal level, women, we all the time don't have the luxury, especially for the WNBA. It doesn't pay as much as some other male professional leagues.
Oh, not even close. Isn't the
women,
WNBA salary it's you'd be in the poverty level, correct? At least in California, if you were making a WNBA salary, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. However, I just talk about the fact that a lot of these women, they go back not only for the NIL, but also to get their college degrees. Because that college degree really goes so far.
Yeah.
They can't they
Yes.
can't just rely on athletics and
I like
going
that.
professional to pay for the rest of their lives. They really do have to get these degrees, and I think that's why you see a lot of women, or a lot of these women, forego the WNBA draft, is to just maintain that education, honestly.
Good point. That's a great point, because there are no guarantees in life, and there's no guarantee that whatever infamy you get from being in the WNBA is going to translate to financial success long term. So why not secure a degree and increase your odds of success moving forward? Great rationale. I like hearing that. Sorry to interrupt you. I continue on.
No, it's a very valid point. But just because I talked about some of those players that are foregoing the draft, that and a lot of players that also really played well in March Madness. So the Valkyries pick, I've seen a lot of different names being thrown around, but in the most recent mock drafts, some of the ones that the two most popular I've been seeing are Kiki Iriafen from USC, who also played at Stanford, so she also has Bay Area connections, and Anissa Morrow of LSU. Both of them
Yes.
are very dominant forwards that I think would be great fit for the Valkyries and just bring a lot of life in general to the Golden State, honestly. But those are the names that I've seen floated around a lot, but there's so much still subject to change.
You're absolutely right, because I've been looking at mock drafts, and I feel like every mock draft is a different answer for what the Golden State Valkyries are going to be doing here. Again, such a bummer that. Let me ask you this real fast, just because I don't want to let go of the dream of Paige Beckers possibly coming to the Valkyries. Is there any possibility that Paige Beckers could use leverage in terms of maybe picking the team she wants to go to, or is there no chance in hell? Meaning, like, could she tell the Dallas Wings, who have the #1 pick, I don't want to play for you. If you draft me, I'm going to sit out. Like, before that happens, like, is there any possibility of that happening?
I highly doubt it.
Okay.
There even, because she technically still does have another year that she could return to UConn, but in the tournament or before the tournament, she told ESPN analyst Rebecca Lobo that she would declare for the draft officially. So in her declaring for the draft officially and not deciding to go back to UConn, she kind of did subject herself to just take that #1 pick.
Fair. That is fair.
Yeah.
Good, very good point there. Because you're right. She could have come out last year. And again, this is the variety, the diversity, if you will, of all the different players I'm seeing in the mock drafts. Like you mentioned again, Kiki Iriafen. How do you pronounce her last name? I'm sorry.
Iriafen.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. So Kiki Iriafen of USC is one, and Bruce Morrow in the chat is advocating for Kiki. But she's not the only one. There's so that's what USA Today projects the Golden State Valkyries drafting Kiki Iriafen. But then you go to CBS Sports, they project Juste Josaite of Lithuania, a guard. Any familiarity there?
Not a ton of familiarity. However, I do know that with the Valkyries already existing roster construction, they have a lot of international influence. Their general manager, Ohamanian, she spent a lot of time with USA Basketball and just traveling around the world. So they're not afraid to tap into that international market. So I can see why that would be a pick that they're looking at.
And then Athlon Sports in their mock draft. They don't have a mock draft. Never mind. Here's a couple more mock drafts, because again, there's so much diversity here in terms of who the quote unquote experts think are going to go where. ESPN, their mock draft, and this was an interesting one because this name is projected in other mock drafts to go much higher. But ESPN thinks Dominique Malonga of France, and forgive me if I mispronounce that, at 6'6", a center. I've watched some clips of her. She has strength. She has power inside. What are your thoughts on that being a possibility? Again, Dominique Malonga, if I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, again, international player from France. tremendous upside. I mean, if there's any reflection on what's happening in the NBA front with drafting some of these French players with a lot of upside, the WNBA and the Valkyries would be playing into that similarly with Dominique. It's just one of those things where when you're looking to really build up an organization with this expansion, investing into someone that young could definitely have a lot of benefits come down the road and just really growing her within the organization. And then, like I just mentioned before, with the Valkyries and their tendency as of right now to have some international players on the roster.
Yeah, yeah. And look, the Bay Area, there's no secret that, this is a diverse region, much more welcoming of, diverse backgrounds and so forth. So it makes some sense there. And then the one final mock draft I see in front of me, this is courtesy of the Associated Press, mentioning a player you've already alluded to, Anissa Morrow. One more time, is your thoughts on Anissa? I know you gave us some description, but if you don't mind adding to that or repeating it one more time. And who would you pick if you were the GM of the Valkyries?
Okay, well, I'll say to answer your first question with Anissa Morrow, she is an explosive forward double machine. She will be a force in the paint. She's one of the nation leaders for Division I women's basketball in double-doubles. I believe she averaged one for the season for LSU.
Well, just to add to that, Sophia, I'm looking at her numbers right now. This past season, Anissa Morrow averaged 18.7 points and 13.5 rebounds a game. That's incredible. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so she's just and their head coach, Natalie Nakase, she has really talked about she wants competitors that play with a chip on their shoulder and are just dogs, ultra competitive in general. Anissa Morrow really is the embodiment of that, I feel. She can go for days. She is not someone that when you watch her play, she has an insatiable force to her. We're just hungry for getting those rebounds, making those hustle plays. But I think about Kiki Iriafen as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say she has maybe a little bit more skill and finesse to her game, which I love as well as kind of that interior kind of mid-range post dominance. It's really up in the air.
Well, and I'm looking at Kiki's numbers right now at USC, and Kiki, side note, was a star at Stanford, and like a lot of players in today's college game, they move around a lot, right? And so she did that as well. She went to USC for her final season, played with Juju Watkins this year before Watkins went down with that ACL tear, unfortunately. And you've experienced that. You know how brutal of an injury that is. But Kiki averaged 18.2 points per game and 8.3 rebounds per game. So good numbers from Kiki as well. Tough choice. So you're basically torn between Kiki and Anissa. Is that fair?
I am, no? And I also really do like Dominique as well, though. However, I have seen her, like you mentioned, go higher than the 5th pick that the Valkyries have. So I almost don't know if she's going to be available. I think I would have to go with Kiki.
Okay, good pick.
I think that.
Well, let me ask you this: if Dominique fell to the Valkyries, would that make your decision easier? Like, would you take her, obviously, or is it still a tough choice?
I think I would take her.
Okay, yeah. I mean, look, she's 6'6". Let me ask you this, because I'm not, obviously, you're teaching me and the audience so much about the WNBA game. So, and I'm a student of yours when we have these discussions. What is 6'1"? Because I'm looking at heights, and they're obviously very different between the NBA and the WNBA. And for example, I saw that Anissa Morrow is 6'1", which in the NBA would be a point guard, if that. But in the WNBA, what is 6'1"? Like, what is the equivalent in the NBA to 6'1"?
And I think That's a hard question as well, just because for women's basketball players, it's a lot due to body type as
Okay.
well. And so, like, Anissa Morrow, she's very strong, more so like low to the ground, explosive 6'1", as opposed to, I believe, Juju Watkins. She's also kind of sitting and floating around that range, but she's a little more lanky and shifty and a guard that plays more so on the perimeter. But yeah, but Anissa Morrow, she always plays bigger than what she actually is as well. And that's where I say sometimes you get into body types, because you can have a 6'1" where they're really strong, low to the ground, but also a 6'1" that's very lanky, and they can play completely different styles and completely different positions.
Okay, let me rephrase it. So maybe this question will be easier for you. Does Anissa Morrow have a comp in the NBA from your perspective?
A comp,
like a player in the NBA that reminds you of maybe more from a size perspective, so I can get a better idea as to like what this individual can bring to the table.
That's a really hard question. I'm trying to.
You can think about it. You don't have
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
an important one. I mean, if you can't answer it, it's not a big deal. I promise. I'm just trying to get it. I'm just trying to get a more relative feel here.
Like I mentioned, just with Anissa Morrow, a little bit of an undersized big, but double machine, rapacious, going to the boards and finishing at the rim. That would be my best description of her.
And then Juju Watkins, who suffered that ACL tear, she's going to be in the draft next year, if I'm not mistaken.
So she's only a sophomore.
Oh shit! All right,
and
so
especially she will most likely miss a significant amount or a solid amount of the season next year. So I don't think she would be in the draft next year.
Oh, so it would be 2 years. Okay. I brought that up because I was just picturing her in a Valkyries uniform.
But you would be both.
Yeah, that's down the road. So, okay.
That's down the road.
Awesome. And someone asked, by the way, the dog in this shirt, that is poor Rocco, who unfortunately had to relocate to Texas. I hope Rocco's doing well. We haven't got any updates on Rocco Thompson in a little while, but I hope he's doing okay. Anything else, Sophia? I feel like we've covered everything, but do you feel like I missed something that we should discuss? I don't see anything else in the chat.
You know what? I guess my last thing would be, we talked a little bit about the standings and how
we did not cover that.
Yeah, so the Clippers are in 5th, the Warriors are in 6th, the Timberwolves are in 7th, the Grizzlies are in 8th, and they all have the same number of losses. Actually, They also have the same. Denver in 4th place also has 32 losses, but they're only half a game above that pack that I just mentioned. And the remainder of the Warriors games are the Suns, the Spurs, the Trailblazers, and the Clippers.
Oof.
I think they could close the rest of the season out 4-0. And
you're right. The way that Steph, the way that Draymond were talking and acting, even the way that Steve Kerr was talking and acting, made me think that they're not worried, which is crazy to me. I love that sentimentality from them, but that is kind of wild. And here's the standings. I'm going to share the screen right now. I'm so glad you brought this up. Thank you, because I just spaced on that. My apologies. And when we see these standings, give me 1 second here. Here we go. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, if it comes down to it, where Memphis, Minnesota, Golden State, the Clippers, and Denver, all 5 are tied in the loss column, Denver has played one more game than those other 4 teams. But let's say, for the sake of argument, the Clippers, Warriors, Timberwolves, and Memphis all win their next game. So suddenly we have 5 teams with a 47-32 record. Denver would drop and be below Memphis, which is insane to me. But that is what would happen. That's crazy to me. And again, the Lakers beat OKC yesterday. So they're only like sitting very pretty at the 3 seed. That pretty much ended any hope of the Warriors leaping up to 3 because the Lakers have 30 losses, the Warriors have 32. So the Warriors would have to not just equal the Lakers, they'd have to pass them up because they lose the tiebreaker. So, and the Lakers, if by some chance they lose 2 more games and suddenly they get in this mix as well, and now we have 6 teams tied with 32 losses, the Lakers would win the tiebreak over everyone else. So they're sitting pretty as well. And can you repeat the Warriors schedule one more time? The remaining 4 games, if you have it in front of you, if you toss it.
So they're at the Suns, at home versus the Spurs, on the road versus the Blazers, and at home versus the Clippers.
That Clippers game could be huge.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, dude, this is crazy. And
It's-
we got 1 week to go. Do you have the schedules for all the teams in front of you, or just the Warriors?
I'm just using my phone, so I can pull
No,
them up.
it's all good. I got it here.
Okay.
So the Clippers, I want to see who everyone has left. So the Clippers, their remaining schedule, they have 4 games left as well. They're going to play San Antonio and Houston at home. The Houston one might be a challenge. And then they're on the road at Sacramento and at the Warriors to finish out. So, the Lakers, I'll just go through all these real fast before we go. The Lakers' final 4 games, and Sophia, jump in at any point if you have any thoughts on these. The Lakers are at OKC, at Dallas. That should be an interesting one, by the way. At home against the Rockets and at Portland. So there's some interesting games there. This whole thing is interesting. The Nuggets have 3 games remaining on their schedule. The Nuggets finish the season at Sacramento, at home against the Grizzlies, at Houston. So that isn't easy. That's actually a tough stretch.
That's actually, especially looking at they've lost 4 games in a row. They could slip.
They could. We're hoping for that. The Minnesota Timberwolves have 4 games remaining. Those games are at Milwaukee, at Memphis, and then they get 2 cakewalks to finish the season. They're at home against Brooklyn and at home against the Jazz. So Minnesota's looking pretty good, except for that game at Memphis. And a side note, you have to love all these games where they're playing each other because one of those teams is guaranteed to lose. So when Minnesota is at Memphis this Thursday, for example, guaranteed one of those teams is getting a loss. You have to love that. Memphis, their final 4 games of the season. This is madness, dude. This is just absolute insanity. Oh, so they got an easy one and then 3 somewhat challenging ones. So Memphis finishes the season at Charlotte. Then they host the Minnesota Timberwolves Thursday night, which has now become a huge game. At Denver Friday, another huge game. And then Sunday, which is every team plays Sunday to finish up. I don't know if I think every game is scheduled Sunday at 12:30 p.m. And the NBA does this so that teams are not scoreboard watching before game starts to maybe bench players or otherwise. So Sunday, Memphis finishes up the season at home hosting the Mavericks. And I think that's every team, right? Did I miss anybody?
Nope, you didn't miss anyone.
So, I mean, based off that, it feels like Memphis has a bit of a tough stretch. Denver has a bit of a tough stretch. I have no idea how this is going to play out, Sophia. Any predictions?
I have no idea.
Chardol dropping. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It's hilarious looking at the Western Conference as opposed to the Eastern Conference, where every single team went through. Every single team has a little marker next to them, either division secured, playoff berth secured, play-in secured, eliminated. Every single team in the East has already been established, but not the West. I just found that funny.
It is fun. Do you read anything into the Cavaliers' recent struggles? Because they've lost a few. So have OKC, I guess, but the Cavaliers have been on a bit of a slide lately. Are you reading too much into that or no?
Not a ton. I think that especially they're sitting so comfortable at the top of the East that they can pretty much chill for the rest of the regular season and make sure that they're good to go for the playoffs.
Oh, man, it's going to be a fun ride. Sophia, you join me every Monday at 3 p.m. Unless there's a game, then you join me that night. And very exciting news. We have a new sponsor that's going to be sponsoring V for Valkyries, the Rick Barry Show, the program in general. We'll announce that, I believe, as soon as tomorrow. But it's a band called Decades, and we're going to be hyping up all their upcoming tour dates. And if our campaign results in even just one show book for them, they're going to stay with us long term. So stay tuned for that. And thank you in advance to the band Decades for being a sponsor of us. Can't thank you enough. Sophia Jones, anything you want to promote or mention before we call it a day?
No, not really. Just it's going to be, by the time we convene next week for the show, things could look so much different.
When we can reconvene next week, we're going to know what's going down. And I'll say this, if the Warriors avoid that play-in, and if the Warriors remember who the best players on this team are, they're winning a 5th championship. I'm so confident of that. And this is not necessarily a reflection of the Warriors being that talented. Don't get me wrong, they're a good team. But when you compare them to the other 4 championship teams, I think this is the lesser version, at least as of now. Maybe that opinion will change. But when you look at the NBA landscape, I just don't see how any other team can beat this squad in 7 games. Again, as long as we're not seeing Steph, Pajemski, GP2 on the court together. Please, Steve. Please, Coach Kerr. End that madness. I'm begging you. Sophia, you are incredible. You're amazing. I can't thank you enough for the contributions you do on the show. And I'm also incredibly thankful I can now pay you for your services. Thank you to the Decades, the band, for sponsoring our show. That is huge. Thank you to the audience and your loyalty. And just even for the folks who push back, like Nathan on our show last night, came on the show and he picked a hell of a night to disagree with me. I mean, I was on a heater, and props to him, man. He put up with me, and that's a lot. So do you, Sophia. Thank you to both of you, and thank you to everyone. We'll be back at this soon. And again, next Monday, we're going to know how this looks, because right now we have no clue. Until then, Sophia, enjoy your week. Everyone else, enjoy your week. I'm going to go watch some White Lotus. Bye-bye. Whoa. I had to stop it there for a second because dude, hold on. I've never done this before, but hold on one second, because poor Chardal, no, I do say poor. He actually dropped a super chat just to show some love, and I missed that. I apologize, Chardal. Chardal dropped $1.99 just to ask Sophia how we're doing today. I'm doing good. I'm doing okay, at least. A lot better than last night when I was beyond frustrated and tired of it. Sophia, how are you doing today before he goes? Chardal dropped $1.99 just to ask that.
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm trying to think of more details to provide, and I'm just doing well. Like, I feel like that's so basic. But I mean, I really am doing well. It's been cool.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you to everyone again. Chardal, thank you, brother. I'm sorry again for missing that. I'm glad I caught it before the show ended. Now I'm going to watch some White Lotus. Bye-bye, everyone.